morning when the plan says Chattanooga and Hamilton County is to receive its dividend in geoengineering credits. There are, to the east of the city, stripes laid down by jet traffic. Now, on those days, there's really nothing happening west of Chattanooga on the western horizon. It's all clear. It's always in the east. Now, that conforms to the concept of solar radiation management and deflecting sunlight. Deflecting sunlight is the theory, the pretended theory of solar radiation management, or some call it chemtrailing, but I like to call it sky striping because sky striping is a neutral word. It's not a fighting term. The phenomenon that your eyes see. Chemtrailing implies an analysis. The word sky striping, which is my nomenclature, does not. It simply says there are white stripes in the sky. What's it all about? So I'll let you decide what it is. Maybe it is just water condensation. Maybe just water vapor. That is the position of the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Air Pollution Control Board. Colby gave me an interview a couple years ago now, a noted interview, in which he presented to me the EPA FAQ, the Frequently Asked Questions brochure, that's about 14 years old or so, has not been changed much in all that time. And it says that what we're seeing east of Chattanooga in the horizon is simply water vapor. However, while that is happening and you have these crisscross patterns, the checkerboard patterns very noted today, you have other jets flying in the same sky with just a little bit of a trail behind them. Those would be arguably contrails that are just water vapor that quickly dissipates. What we have over Chattanooga today in the north and the east of the city are negative emissions. They are public policy. For our admiration over Chattanooga and the county, we have policy skies, sky tattoos, a kind of hieroglyph which you can't understand or can't decipher unless you just think a little bit about the national government and its capacity for overweening solutions, right? For solutions that are bigger than any problem. The problem, even in the inner circles, no doubt, are pretended problems. And problems that are from excogitation, which is to say from thinking deeply and pulling out things, right? Pulling rabbits out of a hat. Almost. And that theory, of course, is the CIA-generated theory from the 80s, and that's global warming, which was turned into climate change since the direction of the temperature gauge kept going up and down. The officials said, well, we just need to be able to emphasize that there are dangers to people, to humanity, to civilization, to borders, to riverside, not riverside, but oceanside cities, deserts getting bigger, and so on. We have to be able to attribute that to something. And so let's say that to maintain our control, to change colors from red to green. The threat to the West is not the red menace of communism, which was a faltering system at its very inception with Lenin and Stalin there in the 1950s and 40s. But one that was doomed to fail because it could not account for costs. The green theory allows for federal hegemony, which is to say federal control, total control of the weather, with, of course, important corporate partners. That would include Monsanto. That would include the media companies that offer the weather forecast. And that way, you disarm the public and you direct the members of the public attention, or the attention of members of the public in other areas, and make the bizarre weather patterns that we have here in Chattanooga seem to be purely natural. However, if you look at websites such as geoengineeringwatch.org, remarkable analyses and gathering of satellite data. Dane Wigington, an environmentalist and an activist, runs that website, and recently gathered together many satellite photos showing the use of jet traffic and white stripes over southwest Africa, over the waters west of southern Africa, which is said to be the birthplace of tornadoes and hurricanes. And they're remarkable photographs from on high of the stripes laid down to alter the conditions. Now, what happens with the deposit of aerosolized particulates, rain stops, that you prevent rain from falling. We've had page one stories in the Chattanooga Times Free Press this week talking about dried up riverbeds and the effect on economies, on farming, on the way people live their lives. Well, these things are if anything, they're collateral damage. There's not a huge amount of damage yet, but there is damage. The industry, the group of people here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County that mow lawns have been, of course, devastated. Their business has been dried up all summer. They've had, rather than 15 mowings, they have maybe 4 or 5, and that comes from this manipulation of the weather. Now, particulate is what is being emitted from these jets, and the particulate is, well, there have been various discussions about what it contains, and I've interviewed scientists about it, including local scientists. Robert Sachi, for example, gave me a detailed discussion about how it would work, how this theoretical program would work, though he was one who didn't take a position on whether we actually have over Hamilton County and Chattanooga program or evidences of it. He did discuss with me how you can put electrical charges on particulate matter if they have a tiny dot of barium or maybe strontium on them. You can have a dot of dust that stays aloft almost forever. The charge pushes it back up. But the explanation, I think, is simpler than that Robert Sachi gave in a published interview. It was published at Chattanoogan.com, also published at Nooganomics.com, my website. But it is, I think, simpler, and that is from Dr. Herndon in San Diego. He has come out very strongly. He is a scientist, does not take federal money, and so is not bound to the official theory that has been reported in recent months in Bloomberg, Bloomberg.com, the news service, which I looked at this morning as I've been noticing. We've had several days of sky striping. I said, well, let me just see what the news is, and I've gathered photographs from Blackie Dar and other people in the Chattanooga area and Tennessee Skywatch on Facebook, and it's about time for me to unburden my soul, if you will, at Nooganomics.com with another photo gallery of this amazing phenomenon, which the naive and those who would that you be naive say is simply water vapor. But it's not water vapor, and Dr. Herndon says that his analysis of all the data and the cost prospect of a massive weather modification program is this, that the American genius for recycling has hit on it again and is truly green. What we have overhead, he says, in San Diego and many other cities is the negative emissions program giving us the fruits and benefits of coal fly ash. Coal fly ash is a talcum powder-like substance that's very, very light, is easily airborne, and it is normally stored in lagoons. And lagoons are clay-lined pits that are kept damp so that the coal fly ash, which is the lightest waste product from the burning of coal, will not take to flight. Right? It's so light, like talcum powder, that it's kept as a kind of mud. And we've had stories in the past few years here in a TVA jurisdiction in the so-called Tennessee Valley where these mud pits have broken loose, right? There was one at a Tennessee steam plant that broke loose and swamped a neighborhood. Well, it's a toxic material to a degree. Now, breathing it on the ground, but breathing it, well, I'd say it's much more toxic. And Dr. Herndon says, and you can read about this at Nooganomics.com, that it is recycled coal fly ash. About 40% of coal fly ash is recycled in all kinds of goods, in building materials, in wallboard, in tarmac as a strengthener, many other uses for that aluminum-containing waste product that you don't want to breathe. So we have this amazing story. We have the federal government bringing very accusing looks upon people who build fires in their yards to burn some leaves or to burn construction trash. You have to get a permit for it, and you really can't burn certain types of waste because it might create particulate matter that floats up into the atmosphere and damages the ozone. Well, that's already happening in a gigantic scale, and yet the scientific establishment says, well, we need to consider possibly having a mass chemtrailing program so that we might alter the planet's temperature, that we might have some means of deflecting the warm beams of light from the sun, which of course make molecules move back and forth as they're heated up and cause global warming. Well, global warming, if it's caused by anything, these writers suggest, Herndon, Wigington, and others, they suggest that the effect of the sky striping program in view today, just look outside, in view today, that the cause of that is, yes, that's right, global warming. These phenomenon warm the temperatures. Now, let's just look just briefly at, this is David Tulis, by the way, David Tulis with AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. We're going to look at today some important things on the constitutional right to bear arms. And Todd Gardenhire, the Republican he's a good Southern man, and he's in the field of making people money, and he's in the Senate there in Nashville, and he's looking out for you. Well, he's really not. And though he has a Democratic opponent in the balloting, whom I couldn't possibly recommend, I'm not sure that if you hear what Todd Gardenhire did in March, he will not recommend himself to you by his sitting on his hands. We are at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and we're the NASCAR station. We are the station of the exclusive provider of the mighty national voice for conservatism, Sean Hannity. And in the afternoon, right after lunch, you've got to right during lunch if you're going out, make sure you tune in to Colin Cowherd. And also in the evenings, we have the ferocious American patriot, Alex Jones. And my name is David Tulis, and I'm glad that you're giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. Well, the story at Bloomberg, followed here by some news accounts and by at least one columnist. The story is that we have a science which is that is not a protein science, one that's changing and being born, right? It's not embryonic and protein. It's not about to be born or changing its shape. It's been pretty much the same shape, though the emissions material may have changed. There may have been some various tests. But Anna Hertenstein at Bloomberg writes just a couple days ago about the UN investigating controversial methods to avert runaway climate change by giving humans the go-ahead to re-engineer the Earth's oceans and atmosphere. Now, this is it's a very gigantic, somewhat pretentious lead paragraph. But she says that geoengineering is called necessary to achieve by the COP21 Paris Agreement, clinched last year when 197 countries took part in that to lower global temperatures. And there's a quote from Phil Williamson, a scientist at the University of East Anglia in England. And he says that within the Paris Agreement, there is an implicit assumption that there will be a need to have greenhouse gases removed. And he says that the nations don't realize it, but they've agreed to do that. And among the methods, there's some fruitcake, Jonathan Swift satire kind of proposals that have been floated. One of them is spraying tiny particles into the Earth's atmosphere to reflect sun rays back into space. Geoengineering has been shunned of the uncertainty, this story says. But there's another story by another writer at Bloomberg that came out in August, the forbidden research. And forbidden research would include things that have so-called moral hazard. Moral hazard you have when bastardy by giving unwed mothers a stipend for each child, right? If you then find out that, well, she's having 9 or 10 children, to maintain the stipend and to increase it. That's called moral hazard. Laws often have that, especially laws that pretend to do a positive good by compulsion. You end up subsidizing things that you really regret later, requiring yet another intervention, right? That's how the state and progressive theory works. One intervention requires another with rising bills to the taxpayer or to the rising payments out to the bondholders who are buying the national debt. The story about these forbidden research topics includes sky striping. So again, notice what's happening in this account is that sky striping, also called chemtrailing by people who are very upset at it, right? There are people who are very upset at the benefits of modern government. The story says, continuing the messing with nature theme, a panel of scientists explained how they could inject aerosol particles into the upper atmosphere in an attempt to cool the globe by causing the atmosphere to reflect more sunlight. That again that's just a fantasy. It doesn't happen that way. Well, okay, the reason it doesn't happen that way is that when you have air pollution like that, you have heat trapped. It may deflect some heat, but you also near the surface of the Earth, the reflected heat that might otherwise get out. The story goes on to say that the moderator Stuart Brand of Whole Earth Catalog fame labeled it "hacking the entire planet." And the panelists at this event described in an essay, it was an MIT event that occurred this summer. It was called Forbidden Research at the MIT Media Lab, and there were 500 engineers and scientists and other tech types that attended, or who attended this event. Among them was David Keith and a Harvard economist, both from Harvard, Gernot Wagner, who said that they see as the biggest objection to what they call moral hazard. And their explanation of moral hazard is also interesting. And they say that it's the fear that people would see sky striping as a safety net and consider it a license to continue emissions. So what the moral hazard is, if you sky stripe, no one's going to want to step off the gas pedal, right, or keep the house 2 or 3 degrees cooler. There are other reasons to be concerned, this story goes on to say. On the plus side, getting the aerosol particles up there can be done relatively inexpensively. Well, notice what's happening now. We have this talcum powder coal fly ash up there. It's recycled. It costs virtually nothing for TVA. It would be a good story for an enterprising journalist to track down to which entities TVA has sold coal fly ash. Of course, the government, with this program, which operates in secret as part of national security, will not buy fly ash itself. It will have middlemen. It'll have shell companies to buy it for its use in these strato tankers and hired jets. On the plus side, getting the aerosol particles can be done inexpensively. Okay, so it's cheap to buy coal fly ash. On the minus side, the scientists don't know the full effect they would have on winds, humidity, or extreme weather events. The particles might damage the ozone layer without some additional mitigating factor. Notice what's happening here. These are all theoretical things proposed. You have an effect on the evaporation rates, wind rates. If you have a lot of particulate matter, yes, that slows down the winds, and that you can direct and redirect winds. You can redirect major weather systems by aggressive sky striping. Again, laying out tons and tons, even millions of tons of air pollution. Well, you think I'm being critical to call it air pollution, but it is. It's official air pollution by the good people in Washington as part of their state security apparatus. It's done in secret. The people who do this are confined under criminal penalties to say nothing about it. They have to maintain the secrets of this operation. Keith said such questions could be answered with a series of small-scale reversible experiments. But so far, the topic, says Bloomberg, has been taboo, he says. We're talking about whether this is something that's okay to talk about. So David Keith is wanting to talk about this. Of course, he's someone who's, I have no doubt, received important security clearances that let him work on the inside of the program. So you have a two-track system, actual program going on, and this sort of show among government-funded scientists about what do we need to do? How can we control? The pretense is that no one has ever thrown anything from a plane other than napalm or Gatling gun bullets or missiles, and that's it. Or perhaps over fires out west, orange fire retardant liquids, and that's it. No one's ever thought of seeding the sky, though it's old news that out west there are many sky seeding experiments using salt barium or barium salts and other ingredients to gin up a bit of cloud cover and maybe gin up a few drops of water. The sky striping over Chattanooga has the effect of dissipating storms, and we've had it many times, and I pay attention to this, so I can tell you. Many times when we have a storm system over Chattanooga that looks like it's about to pour out the wrath of God as he did before or at the time of Noah. But no, nothing happens. Maybe a harmless drizzle here or there, but the system passes. It dries up. The storm does not drop. And it doesn't drop because prior to its arrival over Hamilton County, we had a day of sky striping. And what happens is that the materials are deposited above where the storm will pass. And when it passes, the trillions and trillions and trillions of molecules that are this talcum powder-like material prevent the raindrops from getting big enough on any one piece of sky trash, right, and falling. So the storm is dissipated. There's too much particulate matter, and the condensation on each molecule is not big enough to fall. So what happens is the clouds pass, nothing is heavy enough to fall, and you have prevented rain from falling. So that is called a danger, right? Dr. Keith says this is a danger. We are the victims of national economy. We here in Chattanooga, and you, my listener, if you are elsewhere, I do welcome you to our station, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You are a victim as well because other people receive too much rain, right? We don't get rain here. California is in a drought of biblical proportions for some hidden reason, right? A deep state hidden reason. There's a war going on behind the scenes, and California is the bad boy and has its nose against the wall for another year or two, possibly. And we don't know, we can't possibly know what that is, but just look at the results. Sky striping very heavily off the coast of California. Storms over California dried up by intense layering of sky tattoos. And we are, in the end, I think we're victims. And you ask me, David Tulis, how can this possibly be a local economy and free market topic? Well, I do this because I want to disabuse you of your favor of national government. I will offer this as just one more example of the brutal strength, the admirable might and power of Washington, which, of course, is about to go into receivership as the great default comes upon it. It will not be able to delay that. And I think in many ways there is a benefit to the coming default. There is going to be a default, and it will be in your lifetime. It may be even in the lifetime of Mrs. Clinton if she can manipulate the voting booth sufficiently to get herself elected. And, of course, win the Electoral College vote. If she's elected, we face a disaster on many fronts, in liberties and in the environment. The environment is not aided by the official pollution program. It is damaged, and it comes from whom? The big polluter is pouring as public policy, secret public policy, right? Private public policy. Millions and millions of tons of coal fly ash in the sky. It has to be in that amount. It has to be millions of tons. It's all done by software and very smart weather engineers who can control storms. They can control storms, make them worse, make them less bad. Many good things come from this control by man of the weather. But there are, of course, unintended consequences of unknown proportion and cost. This is David Tulis.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Here's what advertisers are saying about AM 1240. HotNewsTalkRadio.com.
Radio station, they really care. They're always calling me probably once a week, checking on me, seeing how things going, see if they want to change any of the ads or do anything different, seeing what my needs are. I've gotten business off the ads that you do for me, and seems to be working well at this point.
Prices were very fair. Areas in this town that we aren't able to get other ways, your radio station is able to help us out, and I really appreciate that.
We've been very pleased with the services we've got. It seems like everybody over there cares about what they're going to do, how it's going to work for us on this end. And we've been very impressed with the creativity of the ads that we've heard. And they always seem to be right on point, even without us having to come up with what's going to be said.
I've been doing business with News Talk Radio for quite some time. It's the best place and the best value you can get for your advertisement. The commercials are great. They're very professional. I was actually blown away.
The commercial that they put together was awesome. It was way far above all the other radio stations we've dealt with. The best we've had yet, guarantee you, by far.
AM 1240 HotNewsTalkRadio.com gets results. Let us get results for your business. For no obligation free consultation, call General Sales Manager Steve Johnson. Call 423-240-5459. That's 240-5459. Or you can always email Steve at NoogaRadiosteve@gmail.com. That's NoogaRadiosteve@gmail.com. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We get results.
A $500 gift card. $500? What? That's right, Bunky. A $500 gift card from a store of your choice. The agents at Exit Realty Scenic City are confident they can sell your house. They can do it in 99 days or less. If your listing proves a slowpoke, they will give you a $500 gift card. No one works harder for you than agents at Exit Realty Scenic City. Licensed in Tennessee and Georgia. Exit sells quickly all types of commercial and residential properties and vacant land. Looking for a dream home, or maybe you're just a first-time home buyer? Let an agent get you started today on your house search. If you're a real estate agent looking for a change, see what Exit can do for you. Training, technology, branding,
culture, and financial freedom. Again, Exit Realty Scenic City. Call 423-551-EXIT to learn more. Call 423-551-EXIT and learn more.
Terms and restrictions may apply.
Explore the world, or maybe just the Caribbean, from the sunny deck of a cruise ship. You're cooled by iced drinks and dozing off amid quiet chit-chat by the pool. Lynn Holcomb runs Expedia Cruise Ship Centers on Gun Barrel near the mall. She'll hold the door for you. One-of-a-kind offers from among 11 cruise ship lines. Through October 22, one cruise line is offering $100 onboard cash credit, another a $500 cash credit. Maybe there's a good fit for you. Expedia is a full-service travel agency. Land, sea, hotels, rental cars. How about an upscale Mekong Delta river trip? Expedia Cruise Ship Centers, Chattanooga. Expedia.
At Eyer Optical, it's a well-known fact. When you buy one pair of glasses, you get a second pair absolutely free. But did you know Eyer Optical has the largest eyeglass selection in the area, with top-name brands and styles in the latest trends? Schedule your appointment with one of the doctors today for a comprehensive eye exam. And remember, when you buy one pair of glasses, you get a second pair absolutely free. Visit EyerOptical.com for a location near you.
Eyer Optical.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A gasoline pipeline explosion in Alabama kills one, injures 5 others, and gas futures are skyrocketing. This is the same pipeline that was shut down earlier, a few weeks ago, when it burst and spilled gasoline into the ground in Alabama, causing a gas shortage. Gas had to be trucked up to our area with tankers. A state of emergency was declared at that time, which has not happened now. This means the price of gas can be adjusted as the companies choose. A Chattanooga man robbed a Publix pharmacy demanding Xanax pills with a note passed to the clerk. When he received his pills, he ran away and then later called the pharmacy saying that he did not receive enough and was coming back. Police were waiting for him. He's been arrested. A Cadillac Escalade driven by Don Alexander crashed into a Toyota Prius at Highway 27 going onto I-24 eastbound, went up an embankment, flew into the air, crashed to the ground. The driver was ejected and killed. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect lots of sunshine, very warm and dry weather again out there through your afternoon. Another record breaker, likely highs near 85. Tonight, lows into the mid-50s. For Wednesday, mostly sunny, back into the lower 80s. Increasing clouds, still warm Thursday with a late shower possible, at highs near 80. This forecast is brought to you by the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer. Doctor recommended and backed by more medical studies than any other thermometer. Get yours today at Walmart or other fine retailers. And I'm Sports 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is David Tulis, and I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. This is the show here in Chattanooga that covers local economy and the free markets. Yesterday was the 499th year, marking the Reformation in Christendom. That was the day when the Augustinian monk Martin Luther tapped on the door of the church at Wittenberg, his 95 questions and challenges to the establishment of his day, the political ecclesiastical establishment of the Roman Catholic Church that had sucked out of Germany the local economy life. We have a Romanesque system somewhat like that then. Today, alive and operating very, very well in Nashville and, more importantly, in Washington. The Nashville establishment run by Republicans is very much like that in Washington. And what they've done is take life out of local economy. Now, that's a local economy here in Hamilton County at the bend in the river. Our town, Chattanooga, led by our estimable Democrat lawyer, Mayor Andy Burke, and his administration. We have a city council. There's a county commission. And then we have other bodies in our decentralized federal system that gives at least lip service to local autonomy and local government, local control. We even have school boards which give, in a way, a kind of illusion that the state factory school, the progressive experiment in child character and cranial manipulation, is a local thing, that it belongs to us, it's our own doing, and we are responsible for ourselves. We have self-determined to have these public schools, and because we have a school board, this is what is going to be taught. Yes, we know it's atheism, it's evolutionism, it's materialism and progressivism, and there's no, absolutely, atheism means there's no God, right? There's simply no God that can be admitted, except in cursory passing as a historical acquaintance of some of our past forebears, the Puritans, perhaps the Pilgrims, but nothing more. And evolution, well, we have evolved from lower animals, and that theory, of course, requiring billions and billions of years of history, of time, so that these hazards in biology can come about and create us. Here we are. That whole theory, based in some slight regard on the initial volume in, I think, 1859 by Charles Darwin on evolution. That system, that system is has brought us many other things. I would say in the direction of evil, not in the direction of good. Liberty is given to us to live out and defend, and if you have liberty, you have to have local economy. Local economy is an idea, is that we make our own decisions and we are responsible. So we have a school board. We think we're responsible for schools, though we're not. There's a kind of simulacrum, an artificial, I'll say, astroturf yard in these things. And we are satisfied here in Chattanooga and Helena County with external control dressed up with local hands, local faces, local suits, local names, local elected officials. And we think that we are governing ourselves, and we really have some say in our own future. And yet, if the good people could control it, absolutely, they would, though they can't. And because total systems that demand a total obedience and are comprehensive in all of life, though they are menacing in a way, they're incapable of ever extinguishing totally the human spirit or the free market. And in fact, free market principles operate toward their disintegration. All empires, especially those that are based on force, disintegrate over time. Look at empires in the Middle East. I've been reading Robert Kaplan's book about the Middle East, and empires there that are brittle, that use too much force, that don't have a popular support, break at some point, sometimes violently, sometimes by self-directed implosions, where the established force says, we've got to adopt some kind of market principles for us and our gang to maintain the supremacy that we enjoyed under the old system, right? Under the old regime, with its tanks and military parades, with its missiles and old-fashioned anti-aircraft guns. We can't do that, so we have to change the form and make it look more democratic, so that our friends can maintain. Liberty is given to us, I'd say, by God, and we have to maintain it. In the end, the Reformation is brought to humanity liberty, and the idea of democratic government comes from ancient Israel and the scriptures, and then the Reformation, which revived the Bible and revived the credit the Bible had among common people, right? With the Bible, the very reading of the Bible makes men free. It makes men understand that their king, right, their master, their tyrant, their despot over them, their master, maybe they're slaves and their master, that man too is bound by God. And so there's this salting effect of the concept of grace, and the Reformation brought sovereign grace. So liberty, but we think, though, we think against liberty. You and I, by habit of thought, we really can't change that unless we really work hard at it. I've been working hard at that my whole life, and I would say I'm still not arrived. What about in schools? Well, do we have liberty there? Well, as I suggested, that we don't, and here's why. Well, we don't have liberty in schooling you, my listener, a patron of public schools, because you've been forced to pay for it, and you might as well just take part. If you're forced to pay for it and it's there for free, well, go ahead and take advantage of it. What about in the question of guns and firepower and defense of women and children, right? That's what guns are all about. Guns are about defending women and children from private crime and defending hard-fought liberties from public crime. That would be the state itself. The state itself is the great threat to liberty. It's not private parties. It's not really corporations. Corporations just reflect the national government and the national policy. But guns are to be, I would say, to be owned by every man. You, my listener, if you don't own a good rifle or a good pistol or a shotgun, you should go to Shooter Supply and talk with Larry Hopper and buy one from him. But we don't really do that. Why not? Why do we not assert the liberty to own firearms? Well, we have professional gun and taser toters, which would be the police departments and sheriff's departments. So we rely on them for personal safety. And we hope that if we are in a confrontation with an armed person, whether a terrorist or whether a private criminal who's maybe a bank robber trying to get away, trying to seize my car for the next leg of his journey west, I really can't defend myself, or I really can't attack him with lethal force. I have to make a phone call and hope that there's a deputy or an officer nearby. So we don't have the liberty in guns because we believe in the professional classes. We believe, just as we do with schools, in the experts that are hired by counties and vetted by private organizations that give them credentials and so on so that they can properly teach our children. We believe in officers with their guns and tasers and their very fast cars with their kind of rams on the front to protect us and to secure us after we have been victimized by a private felon or private misdemeanor. Liberty is something we have to assert individually and personally. And I would like to suggest that those are two areas where you, my listener, maybe you need to make a little think a little further on these areas and make a little progress. Think in terms of the free market. Think in terms of not being beholden to people. If you're the victim of the property tax, and it's a very big bill every year, of course, you got your letter from the county trustee, right, about your property tax. Don't think that you have to take advantage of it now. That's like saying, well, the robber who has pointed a pistol at my head and has taken my billfold with its $485 in there and a credit card has now invited me to eat out. And he's going to take me over to the Dahlia's restaurant inside Daisy and buy lunch for me. Well, I might as well just join him because he is, after all, inviting me and he's not charging me for that. So I will have David Hernandez make me some tacos and drink some iced tea. Why would you do that? Well, you wouldn't. It's a ridiculous example. And yet we do this all the time with free government services offers. The Urban League is having a job fair November 9. I want you to make note of that. If you have a friend who's needing work, pass that on. It's between 10 and 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. That's Wednesday, a week after the election. It's at the Brainerd Pete BX on Belvoir Avenue. 30 employees will be there. And we have been giving reports about the Colonial explosion, the Colonial Pipeline explosion, very near to where the pipe broke in the past, and there were tens of thousands of gallons of fuel lost into the ground. Colonial Pipeline says, according to the TV3's website, WRCBTV.com, that the explosion is shut down the main line again, and we are suggesting that that since the futures markets and the price of gasoline has shot up, the projection of the price of gas, that you might want to have that car that shows empty, not left there for another day or two as you get around to filling the tank on your next use of that car. Take that car out today and fill the tank. This is David Tulis. We are AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, the Colin Cowherd and Sports Station. I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. I'm here every day from 9 to 11. Tell a friend about our show and that you enjoy it, that you maybe have profited from some of our investigations on things. and that he would be wise also, as you have checked in now and again at Nooganomics.com. Nooganomics.com is our website. I'm just bursting with things to publish, and I have one this morning that I want to get out to you. And I'll just have to go from memory, but it is regarding City Council member Larry Groen, who asked Chief Fred Fletcher of the police department about the Officer David Campbell investigation. His person is being reviewed by Internal Affairs, and the brass at the police department, as it wants to do, take a long time to make the best out of a very bad situation. And this is an abusive arrest by this officer of Hanson Melvin, a very common working man, father of 3, happens to be a black man. He is a Christian and has worked all over town in various jobs. I met him when I was working on a story about the abuse of courts on people's records, making it impossible for them to find work. He has a record of minor offenses, some of them common law offenses, nonetheless. But he has that in his background. And so I met him, and he called me one day when he was in March, when he was falsely accused and arrested. And so we have perjury 2 times. We have misdemeanor perjury by the officer on the police report, and then we have felony perjury when the lies are repeated against Mr. Melvin before the grand jury. Hanson Melvin was indicted, and by the grace of Neil Pinkston and Judge Don Poole in criminal court, the case was thrown out on its head immediately when it was on the docket. And that is on account of these mysterious doings in the police department. Well, Officer Campbell is the subject of a letter between City Council member Larry Groen, who is running for mayor, and Chief Fletcher. And Mr. Groen asks about this case, and Chief Fletcher has an answer. It's a very pro forma kind of answer, but there's an odd thing missing in this answer. And let me explain what the missing thing is and why it's kind of queer. Larry Groen makes reference to the 2 cases that we've looked at in detail here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and that's the Rochelle Gelpin arrest and the Hanson Melvin arrest on the same night in an apartment complex near our studio here in Hickson. Mr. Groen conflates the 2 events and has Officer Campbell being responsible for both of them. That's just a factual mistake. Larry was reading our reports on that rather hastily and conflated the man Campbell for these 2 cases, though Jeff Ron was responsible for the false arrest without probable cause of this mother of 4 children. Right? Rochelle Gelpin is a mother of 4. I believe she's a practicing Christian. She's married to a man who's momentarily invalided, and she stood her ground, as I suggested, and got a no true bill out of the grand jury. And so there's kind of a factual error in the letter by Councilman Groen, but the answer should have corrected it. The Chief Fletcher should have answered it to say, just by the way, you're mentioning 2 cases here, but David Campbell is involved in only one of them. The chief says these cases in reference to David Campbell, and there's just one. There's only one case under internal affairs review. So there's a kind of a slippage there that is allowed by the chief, and the chief should have said, look, council member, you got 2 cases here, 2 officers. You mentioned one of them, and here's the story on him. He's out on patrol and he's under supervision of his boss. Well, that's the answer from Chief Fletcher. This is a strange thing, well, you should be. Yeah, you're right. You should be concerned about it, and ask yourself what is going on. Chief Fletcher is lively on Facebook, and I use a Facebook post of his, a photograph on a Facebook post of his from the department, showing him in front of a group of cadets running down the walking bridge, and the chief's face is at the very bottom of a very large vertical image. He looks kind of strained in his running, and he makes comments very, very favorable. It sounds like he's the head of a board of deacons rather than a board of law enforcers who are aggressive in enforcing the laws, and I would say a harassing force against the populace. They are there serving the executive branch of city government. So whenever you vote for mayor and you care not about police abuse, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm disconnecting the mayor's office from police abuse, but you shouldn't do that. You, my listener, should be smart and connect policing, the good and the bad, with the mayor's office. Right now, the mayor is Andy Burke, and when the police department solves a crime, like we had the recent cold case advance, it was on page 1 of the Chattanooga Time-Free Press. You see a story like that, and you used to say, "Nice going, Mayor Burke," right? Because that's those are the mayor's boys doing their job. There are 400 boys, if you will, boys and girls. There are female officers, and they are serving the executive branch to enforce the law. But law enforcement has a very dark side, and it has been in the past couple of years increasingly obvious as to what that dark side looks like. And so tune in and read Nooganomics.com to know what is happening there. There's an account at LifeSiteNews.com I wanted to mention to you about the problem of dead babies. Now, dead babies are black and female, and I mention that because Planned Parenthood and the aborticide industry in Tennessee does a lot of killing of black female babies. Now, I say that to the exclusion of bringing your attention to boys who are killed, right? White boys who are killed. Well, we'll just leave them aside for now and care only for the black females, because we know that concern, that concern will resonate with your Democrat office mate who is pro-abortion. He says he's pro-choice, but he's really for the death of any child whose mother wants to destroy that child as a matter of her constitutional right. The story at LifeSiteNews.com, headline, "Abortion facilities stored 5 months worth of aborted babies in freezers." And there's an abortion conference where abortion providers lamented the problem of getting rid of dead children. And on tape, abortion industry executives described fetal disposition methods such as throwing aborted babies in the garbage disposal, incinerating the remains of preborn children, or sending them to funeral homes, crematoriums, and medical waste facilities. There's a panel discussion by Renee Chilean of Northland Family Planning in Michigan. She said that her facility was perplexed about how to dispose of fetal remains. Due to Michigan's lax laws on medical waste, Chilean said many of the facilities in the Detroit metropolitan areas, where, of course, blacks are predominant, were using garbage disposals for these girls, which caused her concern over potential publicity. Chilean details how she visited funeral homes and crematoriums to determine how to dispose of the bodies in order to avoid a scandal. She worked with Stericycle, a very helpful company, and was overwhelmed by the problem. No company seemed willing at first to help her staff dispose of remains. Nobody wants to talk about dead bodies, and nobody with me, I have to say. There was a point when Stericycle fired us that I had 5 months of fetal tissue in my freezers. We were renting freezers to put them in. This was all I thought about. She says that she was ready to drive to Upper Michigan and have a bonfire or determine how far in the woods I would have to go to have this fire, that nobody was going to see me. To which the audience responded, these are just great people, responded with laughter. Obviously a desperate fantasy of a very well-intentioned abortion clinic owner who wants to have proper disposal and does not believe in recycling those babies that were too badly mangled for use by the hospital and medical field. This is David Tulis.
News Talk 1240 AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, with your chance to win $124 in cash and $124 in food every week with the Hot News Talk Radio 1, 2, 3 NASCAR contest. Hot News Talk 1240. All you have to do is guess who's going to be first, second, and third place in the upcoming NASCAR Sprint Cup race. If you guess it, you'll hear your name live Monday morning at 11:30. Then call AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio to win. Enter your guess right now at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Diesel Off-Road Technologies Sunny Daisy for your four-wheel drive and truck needs. Stuff and upholstery with premium rubber foam. Amigos Mexican Mexican restaurant next to Staples in Hickson. Drink specials during the race. Cell surgeon, the Broken Screen Doc. And Shooter's Supply, 4824 Hickson Pike in Hickson.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Enter your guesses now and listen to the race live to win $124 in cash and $124 in food from Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
I love NASCAR.
We're at the Cantina at Amigo's Mexican restaurant. Yes, ma'am. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans and 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NCAA, the week's big game. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers. Just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular. And it's only $3 a day. If you come here on a game day, Saturday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NCAA, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans under a bright sun, but without all the heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos, between the Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the table next to mine and enjoy the great NCAA game with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it's starting. The NASCAR racer's ideal is quality and excellence. So is mine. Hi, David Tulis here. My pit crew is S&S Auto Repair. I've taken Toyotas and Hondas to S&S for 13 years. Even though it's way out of my way. I like being treated fairly, like a neighbor. S&S specializes in Toyota and Lexus, Honda, Acura, Scion, Nissan, and Infiniti. Make an appointment today and get a free 4-inch combat knife as a gift. 855-3436. ssautorepair.net. 855-3436.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Frank Sedapani. Next Tuesday is Election Day, but 25 million Americans have already voted early, roughly 20% of the number of people who cast ballots in the last presidential election. CBS's Nancy Cordes tells us it's no accident Hillary Clinton will be in Florida today.
The reason that she's spending so much time in Florida right now is because early voting is going on in Florida right now, and her campaign believes that about 60% of all Florida voters will actually cast their ballots before Election Day.
Most polls show Donald Trump has cut into Clinton's lead among likely voters, but she still has a significant edge in the electoral vote, which determines who wins. In Washington, CBS's Jeff Pegues has the latest on the new FBI investigation into Clinton's State Department emails.
What investigators are looking for is classified material and anything tied to Hillary Clinton. We've talked to people who think it is entirely possible for there to be more warrants and more interviews.
Donald Trump's taxes are back in the headlines. CBS's Barry Bagnetto has that.
To avoid paying tens of millions of dollars in taxes that potentially could have ruined him financially, Donald Trump used a maneuver to keep from reporting forgiven casino debt, the New York Times says. It was in the 1990s, and according to the Times, Trump's own lawyers told him the move would likely be rejected by the IRS. Congress eventually banned the practice. A Trump spokeswoman says the newspaper is either misunderstanding or intentionally misreading the tax law involved.
Overseas, Iraqi special forces have fought their way into Mosul, a city under ISIS control, for 2 years. Reporter Owen Holdaway is monitoring developments from Erbil.
They've met quite heavy resistance from ISIS using human shields and also blockading various streets. However, there are also reports of insurgency actually coming up within the Sunni population against ISIS within the city, which could actually speed up the eventual fall.
The Iraqis were able to take control of a state TV building in one part of the city. In Baltimore this morning, 6 people died when a school bus plowed into a commuter bus, peeling it open.
It literally looks like a bomb exploded in the bus, and it's catastrophic damage.
Police spokesman T.J. Smith, the school bus drivers among the dead. There were no children on the school bus. Premature births are up for the first time in 8 years. Dr. Edward McCabe with the March of Dimes says 1 child in 10 is less than full term.
We're among the worst of the industrialized countries. It's really disappointing that we aren't doing a better job for our babies.
Premature births can lead to lifelong health problems. Could the transit strike that began overnight in Philadelphia have an impact on Election Day voter turnout? One writer worries that it could if it isn't settled by then.
Let's get this done. We got to vote. It's a very important election.
In early Wall Street trading, the averages are mostly lower now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down about 12 points. This is CBS News.
Attention, all U.S. business owners. If you accept credit cards and have taken a merchant cash advance in the past 12 months, you must hear this. Any business owner who took a merchant cash advance against future revenues may now be entitled to only paying a fraction of what you owe. That's right. You may be able to wipe out a substantial amount of your remaining loan balance. Business owners are invited to call the toll-free loan reduction helpline right now at 1-800-680-5060 and find out if they qualify. Put an end to those annoying daily payments by calling 1-800-680-5060. Again, any business owner who took a cash advance against their future revenue should call 1-800-680-5060 right now to see if they qualify to have these loans substantially reduced. Call the Loan Reduction Hotline now for a free consultation at 1-800-680-5060 to see if your business qualifies. Just call 1-800-680-5060. 1-800-680-5060. That's 1-800-680-5060.
A report to the American Academy of Pediatrics says keeping a clean house can really help children with asthma. CBS News correspondent Jim Hannity has the latest from the Health Watch.
Researchers say reducing indoor allergens and pollutants can bring asthma under control while reducing the need for medication. Among the things in the home that contribute to asthma symptoms and attacks are dust mites and mold, but also furry pets, smoke, cockroaches, and even cologne and perfume. Jim Hannity, CBS News.
Researchers say a skin patch that delivers small doses of peanut protein may help children overcome peanut allergies. Nearly half the children who wore the patch for a year were able to consume more peanut protein without showing ill effects. The treatment works by training the immune system to tolerate small amounts of peanuts. 4 to 11-year-olds showed the most improvement. Older children didn't seem to benefit as much. Frank Sedapani, CBS News.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect lots of sunshine, very warm and dry weather again out there through your afternoon. Another record breaker, likely highs near 85. Tonight, lows into the mid-50s. For Wednesday, mostly sunny, back into the lower 80s. Increasing clouds, still warm Thursday with a late shower possible, highs near 80. This forecast is brought to you by the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer. Doctor recommended and backed by more medical studies than any other thermometer. Get yours today at Walmart or other fine retailers. And I'm Shortine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Moore. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Martin Truex Jr. is off the pace and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott Powers around the outside. Michael McDowell pops the right front tire. Here's Martin Truex to the bottom. Blaney blocks him off too. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott went 4 wide on the back straightaway. They're side by side for the lead.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
The voice of NASCAR. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's David Tulis.
Can we trust the National Rifle Association's ratings of Tennessee legislators when some very good legislators such as May Beavers and Judd Matheny deserve good recognition and get it, while others are seemingly the enemy of your rights, your constitutionally guaranteed rights, and they get good ratings too. And then others who are on your side, the side of you, my listener, get a bad ratings or a rating that changes kind of in midstream. What about that? Can we trust the NRA? Well, that's a minor question. I think the main question is what happened to constitutional carry in the General Assembly this year. Constitutional carry is the framework for reestablishing your rights, which are now being sat upon by state government, the bureaucracy, the Republican Party, the governor, and many voters, including adding their weight to that giant buttock is Todd Gardenhire. Todd Gardenhire, senator from the Chattanooga area, was crucial in the vote to defeat once more the effort to have the whole House, and the Senate rather, weigh in on what's called constitutional right to carry, which is recognizing something that you have as a God-given right that you should be able to defend, but you're hard pressed to do that. We have on the phone the executive director of Tennessee Firearms Association, John Harris. He's an attorney. He's been practicing law for 30 years and is the volunteer executive director of the TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association. It's like you're Gun Owners of America in Tennessee. John, tell us what happened in March. On March 8th, there was a Judiciary Committee hearing in Nashville, and in attendance was Senator Todd Gardenhire.
Yes. Well, first, thanks for having me on this morning. But let's do talk about that, because I think it shows exactly what part of the problems are in Tennessee. Over the last 3 years, the Tennessee Firearms Association has been working with legislators to bring constitutional carry legislation full bore in Tennessee. 11 states have it now. 30 states, including every state that touches Tennessee but Georgia, has constitutional carry, at least in what's called open or visible carry mode. Tennessee doesn't have that. In March of this year, Senator Mark Green from Clarksville carried a bill that we helped write that would have adopted constitutional carry in the state of Tennessee. And what that means is, just by virtue of the fact that you're an adult citizen of the state, you should not have to have a handgun carry permit or state-required training or pay a fee to the state to exercise your Second Amendment rights. Our bill would have continued the process of allowing people as an option to get a permit for reciprocity purposes, say, for example, to travel to Georgia. But it wasn't going to be required that you have a permit to carry a handgun for self-defense. So Senator Green had this bill up on Senate Judiciary. And Senate Judiciary is overwhelmingly loaded with Republicans in this state at this time. And unfortunately, the bill was killed in Senate Judiciary, and it was killed because a handful of Republicans did the wrong thing. We had one senator from West Tennessee, John Stevens, voted no on the bill. Another senator from East Tennessee, Doug Overby, voted no on the bill. And then Todd Gardenhire from the Chattanooga area just sat there, present not voting. He basically was a spectator when it comes to your constitutional rights, as opposed to taking a position for or against constitutional carry. Now, that's what happened in March in the Senate on constitutional carry. 2 Democrats voted against it, 2 Republicans voted against it, and then Gardenhire, who was clearly the swing vote, had he voted yes, that bill would have moved forward and gone to the Senate floor for a debate. And he just sat there and did nothing. So that's more or less what transpired in March. Now, roll forward to today and the fact that we vote next week for our, election cycle and consider the NRA endorsements. The NRA's lobbyist, a young lady by the name of Erin Looper, was sitting there in the room present when this vote took place. And she's the one that is primarily involved with giving the NRA's ratings for candidates in the upcoming state elections next week. And she gave, and I think he earned it, Senator Mark Green an A+ rating and an endorsement. But the question is, and what your listener needs to consider is, what kind of ratings, what kind of consequences came as a result of Senators Stevens, Overby, and Gardenhire voting to kill or to ignore constitutional carry? And what I find very interesting and somewhat concerning is the NRA not only gave John Stevens an A+ rating on Second Amendment issues, but gave him their endorsement. The NRA gave Doug Overby an A- rating and gave him their endorsement. And both of those voted against constitutional carry. And then Todd Gardenhire, who's running in Chattanooga, got an A rating for just sitting there and not even voting, and he's also endorsed by the NRA. And I think your listener should be asking some hard questions as to how does the sponsor of the bill get an A+ rating and endorsement, but 3 legislators who worked very hard apparently to kill constitutional carry also got A or A+ ratings and endorsements.
Well, it seems like a case of schizophrenia on the part of Aaron Looper. But how does she reflect the overall position of the NRA vis-a-vis the right to bear arms? My understanding is the NRA is a very weak organization, and it always favors a kind of regulated gun control. In other words, gun control light or gun control without the sharp teeth.
Well, you know, in Tennessee, I'll say this: I've been doing this for 21 years now in Tennessee, and from the time that I started in '95 up until 2008. I had no complaints at all about what the NRA was here trying to do in Tennessee as a representative of its members. From 2008 to the present, the NRA, and the NRA sends a lobbyist to Tennessee. They don't have a lobbyist that lives here. And the lobbyist that they send to Tennessee, there's normally only one during any election year or any legislative year. And typically that lobbyist is covering Tennessee and perhaps 3 or 4 other states. So they're, 20% of their time, 25% of their time at most is focused on what Tennesseans need. But what we've seen since 2008 is the NRA supported legislation in 2008 that took away the capacity of nonviolent felons to ever, during their life, get their gun rights back. By an amendment they made and approved back then that the prior NRA lobbyist had killed for 2 years in a row. The NRA supported Ron Ramsey's disastrous, parking lot legislation that has had to be amended repeatedly in the last few years because it was so poorly written. The NRA refused to even consider our proposed amendments to fix the bill the first time. And then, like I said, this year they sent out an email at the last minute to their members saying, hey, call the Senate Judiciary and support constitutional carry. But then when 3 specific legislators vote against constitutional carry in the meeting and the NRA lobbyist sees them do it, she gives them A ratings. So where's the consequence to a legislator who thumbs their nose at the NRA when it comes time for re-election and ratings?
Does the TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association, make endorsements, John Harris?
No, as a general rule, we do not. And it's in large part because of the bad experience that so many gun owners in Tennessee have had with NRA endorsements that we refuse to give endorsements. What we do is however, survey legislators. This year, our survey was about 9 pages, and then we post the answers of each candidate to each question. So if you want to know, what we asked them about constitutional carry and what their answer was, you can go on our website and you can actually see the question and you can see their answer. We don't, however, then rate those or score them like the NRA does, nor do we endorse, because what we don't want to be accused of and what we're a little concerned about is that ratings are being given for reasons other than actual conduct in terms of supporting or opposing legislation.
Can you tell my listener, John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association, which, by the way, for you, my listener, is at TennesseeFirearms.com. That's TennesseeFirearms.com. I suggest you go there and sign up as a supporting member. What is important about constitutional carry? Why is it important to have that? Someone can say, well, a Democrat can say, you're just a lobby. You're the gun lobby in Nashville, and you're the volunteer executive director, and you're just another lobby. And so you write these bills Why is constitutional carry so important?
I hear that a lot, but it's important the fact that I refuse to accept any compensation from the TFA. So what I do is not a paid lobbyist. I'm an advocate for constitutional rights. And I get no economic benefit from winning or losing because it's all volunteer time, and it's the same thing is true for the directors in the TFA. It's all volunteer work. Now, why constitutional carry? And that's a great question because there's some people out there and a lot of people in law enforcement, and I know this is rampant in the Department of Safety and with Colonel Trott that runs it.
Tracy Trott.
They think that we have to have background checks and we have to have state supervised training and range qualifications, and that we need to pay fees to the state to exercise a fundamental right, if not a human instinct of self-defense. And TFA's position is, wait a minute, guys, what's all this training and background check and fees? Does it make us safer? Does it make us less likely to get hurt? Does it make us more proficient in defending ourselves? And what we now know, because we've got 50 states that are doing this, is that in 11 states, they've completely gotten rid of the training, the background checks, the fees, the state involvement with your decision to carry a gun for self-defense. And what we see is the incident of reckless shooting and the incidence of accidental discharge isn't any higher in the states that have no permitting and no training requirements. So the question is, we found data that showed from 2008 to 2014, a span of 6 years, the state collected $52 million from permit holders in application fees and renewal fees to staff a department with 71 or 72 employees to issue and regulate the handgun permitting system. And the problem is there's no evidence to indicate that huge expense and that state bureaucracy is doing anything to make us safer. So they're charging us a lot of money. They're putting a lot of hoops in front of us. They're discouraging a lot of people from going through the process because it costs money to get the training and to make the application to the tune of about $250 per person. But it's not. There's no evidence that it's making us any safer. Keep in mind, every state that touches Tennessee except for Georgia allows people to openly carry firearms with no permit, no training, no fees. Every state. Kentucky's done it for at least 30 years. And the fact is that the people in Kentucky and in Mississippi and in Alabama and the Carolinas and in Arkansas and in Missouri that have no permitting requirements aren't more likely to accidentally shoot people. They're not more likely to go out and commit a crime with the gun. So the conclusion is that the permitting system is a bureaucracy that throttles back the ability of people to get permits, but it doesn't really have a reason to exist other than this misplaced belief that it makes us safer, or at least that's what they argue.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association. You're listening to us here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, live on YouTube on the Hot News Talk Radio channel, and always live on Facebook. We stream all of our shows in living color and living flesh, if you will, Technicolor. And John, the question I have for you is this. The idea in the Constitution is that people govern themselves under the structure of law. And it has the constitutional government, whether in Tennessee or on the national level, has the idea of local authority, local control. Constitutional carry implies a confidence in the people. They don't need to be overseen, and they don't need to have rights taken from them and then doled back for a fee and regulation. In view, I guess to finish the point, in view in constitutional theory is self-government and local control and local, you might say, local self-determination. A man who is bearing arms is taking on himself something of a responsibility, right? That's taken by the professional policing classes of sheriffs and police departments and, of course, state troopers. Those are professionals. They do that for a living. They tase and shoot for the public good. Talk about how my listener should have a stake in his right to bear arms. He should have a stake, even though we're in Tennessee with this regulatory system. He should have a stake in being able to defend women and children himself. In other words, bring back to the individual that duty of defense?
Well, if you read any of the writings of the founders and even of the courts and the legislators up until about the early 1900s, a constant theme there was the concept that self-defense, defense of your family, was a personal right that the government really had no jurisdiction over. And that is abundantly clear, that your ability to defend yourself is as basic as any life form, because every life form below the human level has a built-in instinct of self-defense. And so the concept is that you should have the ability to defend yourself with whatever arms you find to be reasonable or suitable to accomplish the goal. And you put that in the context of what the courts have said in the last decades, that government law enforcement, the police officer on the street, the state highway patrol, none of them have a duty, a specific duty to defend any specific person from an attack. So even if you're sitting at a bus stop and there's a patrol officer sitting in his car, maybe he's just come off duty, within literally feet of you, and you're assaulted, there is no duty of that officer to get out of the car and defend you. Now, I think most of them will, but if they don't, you can't go into a court and sue them for failing to protect you when an assault was occurring in their presence. And if the courts are going to say that law enforcement has no specific duty to prevent crime as opposed to a general deterrent duty, then the burden of self-defense falls on the individual. And most people are, unfortunately, the sheep in our society that want the government to provide them housing, food, cell phones, their own internet, every element of life. That segment of society wants government to be responsible for their safety. And that's not the constitutional system that we were established under. The constitutional system is the individual is responsible for their food, their housing, their transportation, their safety. And what we're seeing increasingly, unfortunately, even in Tennessee, is state government, particularly the Department of Safety and the Haslam administration, wanting to nanny state us and wanting to make sure that they control who has a gun and that they know who has a gun, and that they want to regulate and feed us into basically an identifiable group of gun owners.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with John Harris of Tennessee Firearms Association. You can find out more about this very important group, and you should support it at what's the website, John?
Yeah. It's important for your listener to keep in mind that if they're concerned about these issues and what state government's doing on Second Amendment issues, that they should consider supporting TFA as a volunteer-run group. The money that we raise goes directly to the mission and not to salaries of administrators.
And that's
the website address is TennesseeFirearms.com. They can get all the information on there. They can also find us by running Tennessee Firearms as a search term on Facebook, for example, because we've got a group and a page there where we answer questions and post information.
Tell my listener what's wrong with the Title 39 criminal offenses statute that seems to generally criminalize the use of arms in total. Now, as you explained to me, we have effectively in Tennessee a total weapons and firearms ban, and it's in the language is a person who commits an offense who carries with the intent to go armed a firearm or a club. So the intent to go armed statute. Explain briefly how that statute works and evaluate whether it seems unconstitutionally vague. It needs to be challenged directly. John Harris.
Well, the statute you're talking about is Tennessee Code Annotated 3917-1307, and it does say that. It says it's a crime in Tennessee to carry a firearm or a club with the intent to go armed. And most people, common sense people hearing that will say, well, yeah, it's the intent element that's the problem, and carrying a firearm for self-defense, shouldn't be a crime. Well, the problem is that's not the way law enforcement and district attorneys and courts have construed it. And what they've said is basically, if you're carrying a firearm in public, the presumption is that you're carrying it with intent to go armed. Offensive or defensive use, self-defense is immaterial. You're carrying illegally and should be punished for it. And the reason you get that conclusion is that when you look at the very next statute, 3917-1308, it says it's a defense to a charge of illegally carrying a firearm that you have it, for example, at your home or at your premises or at your place of business, right, or that you're doing lawful activity, and they specifically say things like
sports shooting
or sports shooting.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so what we've got is this upside-down Alice in Wonderland definition that most people in this state would reject outright, that says it's a crime for a citizen to have a gun in public or to carry a gun unless you fall within one of these defenses. And it's completely inversed. It ought to say something along the lines of, it's okay for a citizen to carry a firearm for personal or self-defense, and it's a crime to use it in the commission of a violent crime. It's an enhancement factor. But our legislature won't go in that direction. They like to prohibit the gun generally and then create a bunch of narrow exceptions to carry, and that's one reason we have this carry permit statute.
Which these exceptions make it very hard for the innocent person. In your system, as you describe it, making it, recognizing the general right to carry arms, but making it a criminal offense in certain violent or questionable acts, that puts the burden of proof on the guilty party to show that he didn't do that. In the current system, the innocent party who's accused of carrying a weapon is facing traps left and right, right? The innocent user or carrier of a weapon has always traps to be aware of, and that seems to put the burden in the wrong place.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, it's presumptively illegal to carry a firearm in Tennessee unless you satisfy one of the statutory exceptions. And that is, as a matter of constitutional law, fundamentally wrong. It would be like saying it is a crime to get on the radio and talk unless you can prove that your discussion covered one of these enumerated topics, like, an election cycle. Would we tolerate any such law like that? But that's exactly what they do when it comes to guns.
Well, John Harris, thanks for joining my listener and me here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Thank you very much.
John Harris is the Executive Director of Tennessee Firearms Association. You can find out more about this very important group at TennesseeFirearms.com. That's TennesseeFirearms.com. My name is David Tulis, and he is a practicing attorney, 30 years in the field, more than 20 defending the right to bear guns as a volunteer. He does it voluntarily. He's not paid for it. So that's the kind of man you want on your side. This is David Tulis. Find out more about Todd Gardenhire at Nooganomics.com. Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters, who wants to know the real story.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here's what advertisers are saying about AM 1240. HotNewsTalkRadio.com.
Radio station, they really care. They're always calling me probably once a week, checking on me, seeing how things going, see if they want to change any of the ads or do anything different, seeing what my needs are. I've gotten business off the ads that you do for me, and seems to be working well at this point.
Prices were very fair. Areas in this town that we aren't able to get other ways, your radio station is able to help us out, and I really appreciate that.
We've been very pleased with the services we've got. It seems like everybody over there cares about what they're going to do, how it's going to work for us on this end. And we've been very impressed with the creativity of the ads that we've heard. And they always seem to be right on point, even without us having to come up with what's going to be said.
I've been doing business with News Talk Radio for quite some time. It's the best place and the best value you can get for your advertisement. The commercials are great. They're very professional. I was actually blown away.
The commercial that they put together was awesome. It was way far above all the other radio stations we've dealt with. But the best we've had yet, guarantee you, by far.
AM 1240 HotNewsTalkRadio.com gets results. Let us get results for your business. For no obligation free consultation, call General Sales Manager Steve Johnson. Call 423-240-5459. That's 240-5459. Or you can always email Steve at NougaRadiosteve@gmail.com. That's NougaRadiosteve@gmail.com. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We get results.
We're at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Yes, ma'am. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans and 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NCAA, the week's big game. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers. Just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular. And it's only $3 a day. If you come here on a game day, Saturday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NCAA, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans under a bright sun, but without all the heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos, between the Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the table next to mine and enjoy the great NCAA game with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it started.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A gasoline pipeline explosion in Alabama kills 1, injures 5 others, and gas futures are skyrocketing. This is the same pipeline that was shut down earlier, a few weeks ago, when it burst and spilled gasoline into the ground in Alabama, causing a gas shortage. Gas had to be trucked up to our area with tankers. A state of emergency was declared at that time, which has not happened now. This means the price of gas can be adjusted as the companies choose. A Chattanooga man robbed a Publix pharmacy demanding Xanax pills with a note passed to the clerk. When he received his pills, he ran away and then later called the pharmacy saying that he did not receive enough and was coming back. Police were waiting for him. He's been arrested. A Cadillac Escalade driven by Don Alexander crashed into a Toyota Prius at Highway 27 going on to I-24 eastbound, went up an embankment, flew into the air, crashed to the ground. The driver was ejected and killed. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is David Tulis. We are looking at the sky and seeing developments overhead at 30,000 feet, maybe even higher. There are jets crisscrossing the eastern side of the city, as often they do. Solar radiation management, as the theory says, that if we reduce the sunlight that reaches the ground, we are cooling the planet. And that is why often on sky stripe days, the sky is filled on the east, because the sun rises in the east, and as the sun moves overhead, perhaps providentially, that fog, that smog will stay over the city and dim the light, because after all, cities have a lot of concrete and a lot of black roofs of buildings, and those are heat absorbers, and we don't want that if we are the American establishment. And so we have figured it out scientifically that we give every area that has a black spot on the map a heat trap. We will reduce that by some minor amount by fogging it over for a day. That is the theory of SRM, or solar radiation management. And the literature on SRM is vast, and it's very clear that there's no experimentation needed as to what happens when you throw into the sky particulate matter. Now, the particulate matter deposit over Chattanooga, according to Dr. Herndon of San Diego, the man who runs nuclearplanet.com, that's his very old-style website. He is a maverick scientist, he is a nuclear engineer, and has written many academic papers and has fought the editorial establishment that has assailed him in his academic work for proposing that sky striping, as we like to call it here, is in fact dangerous to public health. He says that if you do what the good people are doing as a military operation in secret, if you do that, you are endangering public health. Well, maybe he's right, maybe he's not. Now, what happens is that the government and its contract jets and its fleet of 450 worn-out strato tankers deposit coal fly ash. Now, the process of aerosolization is something like this. You have a tank, a sealed tank, that's, let's say, half full of coal fly ash, which is talcum powder waste product being recycled for the greater good. And aerosols let you take these tiny molecules and suspend them in the air. And what happens in aerosol is that the pressure, with air pressure and aerosolization, every molecule is equidistant from every other molecule. So they're all suspended in the air. That whole tank of weighing many tons, perhaps, has contents that are in the air. They're all suspended in the air. So you have a gas, and that gas keeps all those molecules equidistant, allowing them to be expelled from any opening that appears in the tank. And that would, of course, be the nozzle. And those nozzles are often lined up with the jet engines of the craft. So you think, as you look up or take a photograph, you look up and you think, well, that's just wastewater condensation coming from the jet engine, right? The hot engine, the cooled, damp air of the higher altitudes, the 40, 60,000 feet altitudes, coming in and turning into ice crystals, which is what contrail is. Contrail is ice crystals, and contrails generally just dissipate, though, very quickly. But geoengineering stripes, or sky tattoos, if you will, sky stripes, do not. They become clouds. It is a deliberate program. Just use your own visual reason, for example, to determine that what I'm saying smacks of the truth. How in one sky can you have the stop and start of a trail? If these indeed are damp air pockets, which the latest bit of geoengineering propaganda suggested, then why are these pockets like that? Generally, there are no brief pockets of moisture. You have air; it's all dissipated. It's all more or less the same. There's a steady humidity temperature. There's a steady particulate level in the air, and it all spreads out. Like if you have some drop some salt in the water, well, at some point it's spread. The salt molecules are spread throughout the water, right? When you're boiling water for spaghetti, right? That salt is in there and it's spread throughout. We have I make mention of that paper that was a sociological study of scientists who know about chemtrails, right? Scientists who know about atmospheric conditions and the like. And the consensus was, according to David Keith and the other writers of that paper, that, well, it is simply water condensation. And no one believes that a deliberate program changes the weather and causes these murky formations. But here in Chattanooga, on sky stripe days, we have a haze. We have chembos, which are rainbows in the sky, very heavily particulated skies, which you have when a volcano goes off in the Philippines. You have sunny sunsets here in Tennessee, and that's because the particles of ash fly the jet stream and end up here, making the sun glorious in its evening descent. And we have rainbows that come from the same effect here in the sky. You see them all the time, and we have the giant halos around the sun on what used to be foggy, smoggy days. We now have sky stripe days, which are really worse because the pollution, it's official pollution, the pollution is one of policy. We have policy skies. Does that alienate you a little bit from national government? Does that maybe make you wonder whether your vote means something? Does it make you wonder if my arguments for local economy may have merit? Since what I'm doing in reporting this story, the only journalist in Chattanooga, the only writer to cover this as a news story, the goal is to make you see how far down the moral aspect of our national owners are. Right? These are the deep state players, a combine of organizations, government entities, courts, regulatory agencies, corporations, lobbies, think tanks, and universities. They make up the nexus of the deep state. It's not a single body with a door, right? There's no door at the end of a hallway that says deep state, watch your step or press buzzer. It's not quite like that. It's a combination of many groups and people, but they have a distinct interest, and it's quite apart from the interest of government and national government. Well, there's a story about how far back we've been held by the deep state. Part of the deep state interest is the means of self-financing, right? The means of financing its operations, such as buying recycled coal fly ash for pennies on the dollar. buying that and having an internal fountain of money. That is the central bank, the Federal Reserve System. And with that, there's no need really to tax people for paying for operations. You simply tax them for social control. That's the Beardsley Rummel essay back in 1946, I think in Foreign Policy magazine, where he describes that process. It's Beardsley Rummel, R-U-M-L is his name. Very famous essay among people who are in the know, right? But we're being kept back by the banking sector, which gives us, I'm holding up here for my viewer on YouTube, I'm holding up a $50 Federal Reserve note. It's a green piece of paper with the number 50 written on it 8 times. The face shows General Grant. And for the YouTube, we are here on YouTube, by the way, on the Hot News Talk radio channel, the $50 bill. The $50 bill is a retrograde, scrofulous medium of exchange, which is destined for failure and collapse. And it's destined for failure and collapse because the national government has piled into it and into the holders of this paper, and billions of units like it, digital and printed, the problem of non-payment. And that is to say that the national government and its allies and co-belligerents in the private sector or the corporate sector have poured their future hopes in vast pyramid projects, vast pyramids, which are representing their great hopes and desires for a total security state, a weather controlling state, and of course a welfare state, and profits for our friends. Right? That's very important to recognize that the goal is to always profit the insiders, the people whom we know. We know by marriage, we know by having gone to the same boarding school at age 14 and the same universities. The $50 bill is destined for collapse and destruction. It's a kind of self-destruction. In Africa, we have tin pot dictators like here. They're not quite as refined. There's a little bit more bloodshed. Idi Amin, according to Paul Johnson's history, Modern Times, sometimes butchered people in person. The Clintons do it by proxy, and they don't get their hands dirty. And I'm sure that Mrs. Clinton sometimes has a bad body odor. She wears a very nice perfume and is not likely to have the admiration of it impeded and blocked by herself butchering by garrote a poor enemy. Africa has its bad dictatorships, but there's something that's happening in Africa that we don't enjoy here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and that is money by phone. There's a story that moved in the Sunday Chattanooga Times Free Press on one of the world pages, not the top story, but the second story on that page, making an important report. And I want to bring it to your attention and maybe quote a little bit from it so you'll see where we are. Mobile money, it says, is a way of life for millions of people in Africa who pay their bills by phone, utility bills, they settle loans, they even bail out friends. The story says, in distress. There are 84 million active mobile money accounts in Africa as of December. Again, 84 million mobile money accounts. And that's from a London group called GSMA. It says that there are mobile money operations in 31 countries. We don't quite have that here. We're held back, again, by the issuer of the paper money and the banking cartel that feeds off of it. In the East African capitals of Kampala and Nairobi, where the phenomenon is particularly strong, booths offering mobile money services dot the streets. Now, even taxes can be paid via mobile phone in Uganda.